Nice to see everybody with Rosh Chodesh Sivan. We had to skip Rosh Chodesh Iyar, unfortunately. So the last one we had was Rosh Chodesh Nissan. And you remember we talked about what was so special and the energy and the power of Nissan. And we talked about the fact of the Nisim of Nissan, that things happen in Nissan that are just beyond anything that would be expected, that things happen beyond our control, if we're open to them. And we talked that time about how important it is to be open to miracle, that Nisim don't happen if one isn't open to miracle, but if one is open to miracle, then it happens. As we said, that in the month of Nisan, miracles were going to happen. If you remember, that's how we ended the shir last time. And then we had the event with Iran. And those of you who are here in Eretz Israel, well, remember, and as I said in a recent video, it's really important to remember how you felt at about 11 o'clock that night, because we start becoming blasé about Nisim, we start taking them a little for granted. And it's really important to remember how the fear, the worry, the concern, when we were able to watch on screens and see these rockets coming towards us and nothing you could do, you just had to sit and wait. And it's important to remember those moments and what we were concerned about, and then to remember the extreme perfection of the Nisim and the protection that was there, and to bear that in mind. That was Nisan. Nisan is when Hashem steps in and does things for us that we couldn't possibly do ourselves. When Hashem does things for us that we couldn't even have predicted were possible. That's what the month of Nisan is. The month of Sivan is very different. So the bad news about the month of Sivan is that the miracles aren't around. This is not Nisan. This is not a month of miracles. So that's not, of course, there are miracles all the time. There's Nisim all the time, but this is not the time of super miracles. The good news is that you don't need miracles in Sivan, that we can do what we need to do through our own effort in Sivan. And there's a particular bracha, there's particular blessing in our efforts during Sivan, to the point that that's not something that we need. We don't need to rely on these miracles to happen. So let's get into the month of Sivan and understand them. Firstly, the gematria of the word Chodesh, Chet Dalet Shin, is 312. That's an important number. 312 is an important number because 312 is 12 times 26. 26 is Hashem's name. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is 26. And there are 12 months in the year. So if you multiply Hashem's name, 26, by 12, you get 312, which is Chodesh, which is the month. That's why there are 12. Which means that Hashem applies the secrets of his name to each of the months. And what's nice is that there are 12 different combinations of the letters of Hashem's name. You can put the letters together, and if you're not repeating anything, there are 12 different ways that these 4 letters can be sequenced. And so the way it works in Kabbalah is there's a different sequence for each of the months, and the sequence for the month of Sivan is Yud, Vav, Hey, Hey. So Hashem's name is Yud, Hey, Vav, Ke, but for Sivan, the sequence is Yud, Vav, Hey, Hey. Why is that important? Because what we then do is, we then search in the Torah for a posuk, for a sequence of words that have those same letters at the start of each word and form a description of the energy of this month. And the posuk comes from Parshas Truma, where there are 2 psukim, and it's the end of the one posuk and the beginning of the one posuk. The words that are Yud, Vav, Hey, Hey are Yedotav, Uletzela, Hamishkan, Hashenit. I'll explain it all in a moment. Yedotav is the Yud, Uletzela is the Vav, Hamishkan is the Hey, and Hashenit is the Hey again. That comes from the end of verse 19 of chapter 26, Chof of Yutes, and the beginning of Chof, where we're told, Va'arba'im adnei kesef taseh tachat esrim hakaresh, there are 40 different links of silver that you put under each column. This is the building of the Mishkan. Shnei adanim tachat hakeresh ha'achad lishtei yedotav, 2 sockets under each of these beams. Ushnei adanim tachat hakeresh ha'achad lishtei yedotav, and on the other side also 2 sockets for the 2 pillars. Uletzela hamishkan hashinit, and for the second side of the Mishkan, Tzela, Lifat Safon, on the northern side, Esrim Karesh, also 20 beams. Don't worry about the architecture and the design. We're worried about the words at the moment that we're using here. And it's in this pasuk that you've got the last word of pasuk 19 is Yedotav, And then it goes into Uletzela HaMishkan HaShenit. And for the side of the Mishkan, the second one. So what does that all mean? So if we look now, so what is this magical verse, this grouping of 4 words that represents the Yud Hey, the Yud Vav Hey Hey? What are these words for Sivan? The words are Yedotav Uletzela HaMishkan HaShenit. What does it mean? Well, what we see here is a constant repetition of the word Sheni. So numerically, the emphasis is already on a dualism. There's a binary element to Sivan. Look how many times the word comes up. Assume HaKadosh Shnei Adanim, 2 sockets, Tachat HaKadosh HaEchad, Lishtei Yedotav, on each side, Ushnei Adanim, and another 2 sockets, under the other Keresh, Lishtei Yedotav, on each of its sides, Uletzela Mishkan HaShenit, and on the second side of the Mishkan. So we've got the word Sheni appearing 1, 2, 3, 4 times in this short sentence. So the emphasis here is on the 2-ness of Sivan. There's something particular about Sivan and the number 2. But that doesn't fit in that well with the Gemara in Shabbos. So let's take that first thing. So what I'm going to be doing is taking you through different pieces of the shir. The first piece, which we've just completed, I've listed the pieces at the top of the sources, is Tiv Chodesh Sivan Shnayim. The nature of Sivan is 2. The second piece is B'chodesh HaShlishi, about the 3rd month, the element of 3-ness in Sivan. And then we go into the next session, V'hayu Basar Echad, and they merge into one. And then we go into Zayin Behiluch, which is the 7 in movement, in motion, which will be, so those are the movements of the symphony of the shir. So let's look at B'chodesh HaShlishi, in the 3rd month. What happens in the 3rd month? So we're told in the Torah, B'chodesh HaShlishi latzeit b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. On the 3rd month of leaving Eretz Mitzrayim, B'yom hazeh ba'u midbar Sinai. That's the day that they came to the midbar Sinai. Darash hahu Galilai alav Rav Chisda. There was a man from the Galil who was talking to Rav Chisda, and he made the following comment about this shir. He said, Brich Rachmana, praised is Hashem, the Yahiv Urayin Tlitoi La'am Tlitoi, who gave a Torah of 3-ness. I'm using that word 3-ness because I can't think of a better word. It's not threesome, it's not triple, it's just 3-ness. The Rebbeinu Shalom, who gave a Torah of 3-ness. We've got Chumash, we've got Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. There are 3 sections of Tanakh. La'am Tlita, we've got Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim. There's a 3-ness about the Jewish people. Al Yedei Tlitoi, given to us by the 3rd child of Avram and Yocheved. There was Miriam, and there was Aaron, and there was Moshe. So the 3rd child is the one who gives us the Torah. Beyom Tlitoi, on the 3rd day after the separation, when men and women had to separate themselves, the 3rd day, that's when the Torah is given. Beyarchat Tlitoi, in the 3rd month. So the Gemara seems to be getting really excited about the threesome of Sivan, when we've just said the essence of Sivan is about 2-ness. Is it about 2-ness or is it about 3-ness? And how are we going to manage these numbers? So the idea of 3 is foundational in Kabbalah. The idea of 2 and 3 and the relationship between 2 and 3. Because if you think of the Sfirot, the famous image that everybody knows of the Sfirot, you've got 3 columns of Sfirot. You've got the right-hand column, you've got the left-hand column, and you've got a central column. So you've got Chochmah and Bina, and you've got Keter on front. You've got Chochmah on the right-hand side, Bina on the left-hand side, and you've got Keter in the middle. And then you've got Chesed on the right-hand side, and Gvura on the left-hand side, and Tiferes in the middle. And then you've got Netzach and Hod, and you've got Yesod. And so it is with each of them. There are these 2 columns, right and left, and a central column. And the Vilna Gaon explains in the beginning of Sefer Tzniuta. Sefer Tzniuta is a full small section of Zohar, which contains within it, the Vilna Gaon says, the Sefer Tzniuta, those few paragraphs of Zohar, are like the Aseret HaDibrot to the Tanakh, like the 10 Commandments are to Tanakh. It's all contained within it. It's so intense, so concentrated, the whole of the Zohar, the whole of Kabbalah is concentrated in the Sefer Tzniuta, and the Vilna Gaon writes a most amazing, detailed perush of the Sefer Tzniuta, Sifra Tzniuta. And there he talks about the opening phrase of the Sifra Tzniuta, which talks about the idea of a mitkela. Mitkela is that part of a balance that weighs the two sides. So if you think of an old balance, it had this kind of column in the middle and the two pans on each side, and you would put weights on the one side and your product on the other side, and you would weigh them. The mitkela is that thing in the middle that holds them both. That which holds both extremes, the duality, the two-ness, is held by the mitkela, which makes three. When you've got two, you've got tension. When you've got two, you've got division. When you've got three, you've got togetherness. When you're laying bricks, you lay one brick and another brick. Where do you put the third brick? On top of the crack between the two bricks, and that makes them strong. The way that you make two strong is by having a third one there that holds them together. Three holds two together. And the Sifra Tzniuta talks there about the fact that the first day of the creation was Chesed, and the second day of the creation was Gevurah. It was the third day that brought them together and made one unit. The unit of Tiferet, which is Chesed and Gevurah, held together by the Mitkela. And the whole in the Zohar we see over and over again that when the world was separated, the right and the left, which is also masculine and feminine, those forces of masculinity and feminine, Zuchra and Nukva, when the world had these two forces, they were very destructive. It was only when the Mitkela was introduced, this capacity to hold the two forces together, then the world started finding tranquility. We use that principle, for example, we say every morning, we say the Brisa de Rabbi Shmuel, where Rabbi Shmuel lists the 13 methods of reasoning of the Torah. How do you extrapolate from the Torah? And there are 13 different methods. The last one is, Shnei Ktuvim HaMakchishim Zeh et Zeh. What do you do when there's a contradiction? What do you do when you're reading the Torah and it says one thing in one place and something else in another place? We'll get an example of that in a moment. And they're opposite. You can't reconcile the two. Says Rabbi Yishmael, what you do in that situation is you search for the third dimension. Because when you see paradox in a place where there's truth, if you just see paradox because some journalist wrote an article and there's a contradiction in the article, you don't have to break your head to resolve the contradiction. But if it's in the Torah or it's in the world, it's in the area of truth, you see paradox and contradiction. What it means is you're missing a dimension. So if I were to say to you, I want to see the coast of New York. I want to see the east coast of the United States. Say, fine, we can arrange that. And I say, but I also want to see the west coast. I want to see the coast of California. You say, we can arrange that too. And I say, yeah, but I want to see them at the same time. Now we have a problem. We can't do that. But we can. If we go high enough, you can see them both at the same time. That's what Katuv Shlishi is. You've got paradox when you look at it, looking at it from down below, when you're caught in the detail and you can't pull yourself out to see it from high altitude. Then you've got paradox all around you. To be able to resolve contradiction and paradox, you need a dimension of height. When you're looking at two dimensions, there's distance between 2 points. If you look at a line, and there's New York on the one end of the line, and you've got Los Angeles at the other end of the line, there are 3,000 miles of distance between those 2 points. But if you add the dimension of height, you can absorb those 2 points at the same time. That's what a Katuv Shlishi does. And we'll see an example of it. In the Mechilta de Rabbi Yishmael, again, this is Rabbi Yishmael's Mechilta, Ki min hashamayim dibarti memachem. Katuv echad omer ki min hashamayim. It says in the Torah, I spoke to you from heaven. Good. V'chatuv echad omer vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. And one says, Hashem came down to Har Sinai. So what actually happened when Moshe was in Sinai? Did Moshe have to tune into Shamayim and God spoke to him from heaven? Or did the Rebbeinu Shem bring his Shechina down to the Sinai and speak to him at his level? What actually happened there? Keitzad yitkaimu shnei mikraot halalu. How can they both be right? Ichriya hashlishi. So in Dvorim we have another posuk. Min hashamayim ishmeacha et kolo liyasreka divrei Shmuel melamed shehirkin HaKadosh Baruch Hu shamayim ha'elyonim al rosh ha'har v'diber yamahim min hashamayim. Hashem bent the heavens down and brought the heavens down to Sinai. So Hashem didn't leave Shamayim, so to say, and get into a spaceship and come to Sinai. Hashem stayed in Shamayim, and Moshe was on earth. But Shamayim was bent and arched to the point where it kissed earth at Sinai, and that was the point at which the Torah was given. So which pasuk is right? Min hashamayim tibarti machem, did I speak to you from heaven? Yes. Vayed Hashem al har Sinai? Yes. What you were missing is the pasuk that teaches you that heaven can be bent, heaven can curve. And when it curved, it was curved to such an extent that it actually was able to kiss the earth at the point of Sinai. That's an example of how we use the Katuv HaShlishi. So when you've got a contradiction such as that, you know you're missing information. You know you're missing a dimension. And by finding that additional dimension, you're able to resolve and you're able to understand the paradox. That's the idea of the mitkela. The mitkela is there is always a tension of duality. Without duality, there's no energy. Without a positive and a negative, there's no flow of electricity. Without men and women, there's no sexual energy. Without gravity, there's no gravitational energy. You need something pulling in one direction and something pulling in another direction. You need to create resistance, and when there's resistance, there's energy, and there's an opportunity to do all sorts of amazing things with that energy. But you need duality for that. But if there's duality, there's also stress, and there's tension, and there is friction. So what we do then is the mitkela comes in. You've got this middle path that is able not just to resolve the paradox, but to contain both parts of the paradox. That's really what it's able to do. And that's why the Zohar says that B'chodesh HaShlishi, that what is this? In the third month we came out of Mitzrayim. Why is the third month so important? Why did the Gililai get so excited about the third month and the number 3? Sheb'chodesh hazeh sholet Uriel HaMamuneh HaGadol. It's on this month that Uriel is the angel in charge of Chodesh Sivan. So we're moving, as we come to Rosh Chodesh next week, we're going to move into the influence of Uriel. Ki Nissan, Iyar, and Sivan hem keneged Chesed, Gevuro, and Tiferes. Because these 3 months, just as the first day was Chesed, and the second day was Gevuro, and the third day is Tiferes, so here, the first month of Nissan is the month of Chesed, where the Rebbe Hashem just does things for us. We don't have to do anything. And then comes Iyar, which is a difficult month. And it's a month of Gevurah, it's a period of din. It's never been a good time for the Jewish people. There's a lot of Gevurah, there's a Midas Hadinis in the world. There's justice in the world rather than kindness. The energy shifts. And then there's Sivan. And Sivan is that mitzvah. Sivan is the third month. Chodesh HaShlishi means not just number 3. Chodesh HaShlishi means this is the 3-ness which holds the 2-ness together. The chesed of Nissan, all those miracles of Nissan, the hard justice of Iyar, comes together in a blend of Sivan, which is HaChodesh HaShlishi. This is the third month that's so important. So we started off saying we can see from the psukim that give us the Yud Vav Hey of Sivan, we see it's a month of 2-ness, and yet we see that it's also a month of 3-ness, B'chodesh HaShlishi, and the Galili and Gemara Shabbos gets all excited about the 3-ness of Sivan. The answer is, you can't have 3-ness without 2-ness. You don't have 3 if you don't have another 2 to hold. 3 is made up of 2 opposites brought together in a third container. That's what the number 3 is. And that's what Sivan is. So it's both 2 and 3. You can't have one without the other. So now let's move into the third section of the shir, which is V'hayu lebasar echad, and they become one. Who becomes one? We're talking there in Chumash Bereshit of man and woman, of Adam and Chava. Start off separately, they start off one, they're separated, and they come together again. By the way, why does Hashem do it that way? He seems to be very uncertain of himself in Bereshit. Does he want one bria? Does he want male and female kind of hermaphrodite combined in one bria? Seems to be, because that's how he creates them. Then he decides, no, let's separate them. So now he separates them. And then he says, Vayulu basar echad, they come together to be one. If you wanted them one, why didn't you leave them one? Imagine how much less tzarot there would be in the world and how much shalom bayis there would be in the world if man and woman was one. They couldn't irritate each other, they couldn't anger each other, they couldn't bore each other, they couldn't, nothing, they're just one. Imagine how beautiful it would be. Many psychologists would be out of business. All the marriage counselors, the Rabbonim would have nothing to do. Just one. Now, the Rosh starts off as one, then he separates them, and then he puts them together again. Why? Because that's what the Vayulu Basar Echad is. The threeness can only be if you start with two-ness. If you start with one, if you only have one, there's no place for three. You don't need three if you've got one. If you've got two, you need three. If you've got two, you need a third one. If you've got one, you don't need anything more. So what Hashem wants us to do is to be able to take the two-ness and bring it together in threeness. So to bring it together into this trilogy. And who are the trilogy? There's man, woman. Who's the third? We know it's Hashem. But when a man and a woman are being intimate, we know Hashem is present. And as a result of that intimacy comes a single child, which holds the whole thing together. That's the nature of that relationship. And that's what it means here. Now look what's really interesting. In Chumash Bereshit, it says Hashem took one of his what? Of Adam's? Ribs, which isn't true. Wasn't a rib. It says tzalotav, and we think tzela. If you go to a restaurant and you want ribs, what do you say? You want slaot. And the waiter will know what you mean. And it comes from there, but that's not what tzela means. It says Rashi, misatarav, one of its sides. Adam and Chava were together as one being, but there were two sides. There was a masculine side and a feminine side. Those sides were separated. Tzela means a side. Just as says Rashi, uletzela hamishkan, the side of the Mishkan. Where does Rashi get that word from? The very pasuk we just learned, isn't that so? The month of Sivan, the pasuk for the month of Sivan. L'shtei yedotav uletzela hamishkan hashenit. That whole idea of two-ness is part of what tzela means. Tzela means one of two sides. Tzela doesn't just mean one side. It means one of two sides. You need two in order for there to be a tzela. So when it says Hashem took the tzela, it means he took one of the two sides and made it into a separate being, into a woman. That's what he did. That's what tzela means. And it's so interesting that this is taken from the very pasuk that teaches us the two-ness of Sivan, which means the idea of male and female comes into Sivan. That two-ness is part of the masculine and the feminine. And it's the bringing together, where we come together in Sivan. Firstly, we come together with the Rebbeinu Shem. We know that there's a marriage at Har Sinai. Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, marry the Rebbeinu Shalom at Sinai. There's a marriage that takes place there. There's a relationship. That's part of the male and the female energy that comes together to create one unit. Kudshibricha v'oraita v'Yisrael are one. The God and the Jewish people and the Torah form one unit. The Torah is the mitkala. The Torah is the number 3. So you've got the Jewish people and you've got Hashem come together. It's all very well. Man and woman come together. Who's number 3? Hashem. What happens when Hashem and Am Yisrael comes together? Who's number 3? Number 3 is the Torah. That creates the threeness of Sivan. That creates the threeness of reality. The threeness of God, the Jewish people, and the Torah that binds them together and contains them both. That's what happens in Sivan. Okay, so we've dealt with the two-ness, we've dealt with the threeness, and we've dealt with Vahayula Basar Echad, how they come together as one, using the idea of the third one. Now let's get into the Sefer Yetzirah, which we've done each month, is going into the way the Sefer Yetzirah explains, and we've discussed before what the Sefer Yetzirah is, the oldest Sefer we have, one of the foundations of Kabbalah that talks about, so to say, how Hashem created the world. And when it comes to the month of Sivan, let's just start with Nissan. Himlich ot Hey, for the month of Nissan, you'll remember, Hashem crowns the letter Hey, and if you look at Hey in the Torah, you'll see it has a crown. V'kashar lo keter, v'tzar bo tzleh, and he formed out of the Hey the lamb, the tzleh, which is what in the constellation? Aries. Ba'olam, v'Nissan b'shana, and Nissan in the month of the year, v'yad yamin, and the benefesh, zachar nekeva, and the right hand, or according to some versions, the right leg. For Sivan, it says the following: Himlich ot Zayin, he crowned Zion, and you'll see in the Torah Zion also has a crown, and then he doesn't say he crowned ot Zion and gave it the crown the way it does in the other months. Ot Zion behiluch, he crowned Zion as the king of movement. What does that mean? V'kashar lo keter, and gave Zion the crown. V'tzarfan zeh b'zeh, joined them together. V'tzar bahem, and out of this combination of the letter Zion and the number 7 and movement, he created the twins, Gemini, Ba'olam, and he gave that to be the constellation of Sivan, the Sivan b'shana, in time, in the month at Sivan, the regel small benefesh zachar nekeva, and the left leg. So that's the composition of Sivan. If we've got hiluch, if we've got movement, you need 2 legs for movement. If you've got 1 leg, you can stand still. And in fact, you can go further. If you've got 1 leg, as the Bnei Yissaschar says, you can hop, you can jump. And what is Pesach about? Pasach. The Rebbeinu Shalom jumped. What's the idea of jumping? It's not linear process. Things happen, these jumps, things happen without process. They happen, that's the idea of nes. You're going along in a line and then you just jump and you're in a different space altogether. That's what a nes does, you jump. For that you only need 1 leg. You can jump with 1 leg, you've got your right leg. But if Sivan is about hiluch, if Sivan is about movement by walking, you need 2 legs for that. And that's why Hashem gives Sivan the left leg. So that the 2 legs, we're back to duality now. We've got 2 legs again. In Nissan, we only had 1 leg. In Sivan, we've got 2 legs. And with a right and a left leg, we can walk. We can put 1 leg before the other, and we can take steps, and we can cover distance. And what does he give us in the constellations? Te'umim, of course. Twins, duality. That now all makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about the Zayin behiluch. What does walking mean? Walking is linear process. That's what hiluch means. Lalechet means to go from point A to point B by putting 1 foot in front of the other. That's what lalechet means. And in Parshas Lech Lecha, the Zohar says, Vayomer Hashem Avram, Lech Lecha, Amar Rabbi Lazar says, Lech Lecha legarmach, go for yourself, Lech Lecha, for yourself. What does that mean? Not just for your own interests, but le'atkena garmecha, to grow yourself. Growing and develop yourself. Self-development is a process. It's a linear process. It's step by step. You can't do it suddenly. It's got to be a step-by-step process. And that's what's lech lecha, le'atkena garmach, to improve yourself, to develop yourself. Do it with halicha, do it with walking. Le'atkena darga dilach, to improve the level at which you are, to raise your level. Lech lecha, go, let ant lemekam hacha ben chayavin elin. This is no longer the place in which you can develop yourself. You've gone as far as you can go in this place. You need to move. There needs to be movement in order for you to develop yourself further. And of course, that's the whole idea of halicha, of halacha. The idea of halacha is something that's linear, something that's step by step, something that is a process. You do 1 thing first, and then the second thing. It's laid out all very clearly. That's the nature of halacha. But the halacha of this time of the year is very interesting. The halicha, the movement of this time of the year is very interesting, because we're talking about process. What is the most process-driven mitzvah in the entire Torah? Day 1, then day 2, day 6, day 7, 1 week. Day 7 and 1, day 7 and 2, day 7. It's a linear step-by-step process. So the movement from Pesach, which seems to be the highest level, because that's miracles, to Shavuos. Shavuos is not so much miracles. Yes, there was Mount Sinai, but we'll see in a moment why that's not such miracles. What is the korban for Pesach? The korban for Pesach is So'orim, the korban ha'omer. You bring barley. And So'orim is animal food. What do we bring on Shavuot? We bring bread, we bring wheat, which is human. Only human beings can make bread. Only human beings know what to do with wheat. So there's a halicha, transforming ourselves from animal to human. Now, why would we say we're animal at Pesach? Weren't we at the highest level at Pesach? Yetzias Mitzrayim, we're taken out of Mitzrayim. Nisim, Hashem appears, Hashem takes us out. Truly, we were at a high level. But we were animals because we were objects. In Rabbi Lipschitz terminology, this would have been, we're chefters. We're passive. It's being done to us. You don't develop yourself from what's done to you. That doesn't develop you. When somebody does something to you, that doesn't impact. When life does something to you, that doesn't impact. What impacts is when you do something. It's not when something is done. Pesach was done to us. We did nothing. It was Nisim. And we think Nisim are wonderful, Nisim are miracle. No, miracles are terrible to have to depend on a miracle because it deprives you of the opportunity of journeying. It takes you there in an instant. If all that's important is to get to the destination, then a miracle is valuable. But if the process is important, imagine I say to you, you know what, I've booked the most magnificent cruise for you. You're going to go from Haifa port, you're going to cruise the whole of the Mediterranean, you're going to go up into Scandinavia, you're going to cross over to Scotland, come down to England, cross the Atlantic, and you're going to land up in Miami. That's a beautiful cruise. You say, when is this cruise? It's in 6 months' time. And every day you're thinking of the cruise, you're planning the cruise. The day of the cruise comes, and you're expecting me to pick you up, which I do, and you're expecting me to take you to Haifa, but I don't. I take you to Ben Gurion Airport. I say, you know what? You'll be so excited. I found something better than a cruise. You can be in Miami in 10 hours' time. So I'm like, but that's not what I want. So I'm getting to Miami. That's all very fine. But that's only one piece of it. I wanted a journey there. I wanted the voyage. That's what life is. If you just want the end, you didn't have to be born. The reason you're born is to travel. And miracles skip the travel. They skip the journey. Who wants miracles? If you have to have a miracle, because what can you do? You're stuck. Like we were at Kriyas Yamsuf. We needed a miracle. In Mitzrayim, we needed a miracle. If you need a miracle, then it's a miracle. That's fine. That's why in the Lithuanian world, Meir Soloveitchik used to say to me, we don't speak about miracles. Not because our Rabbeim didn't do miracles. They used to do miracles every day. Because they were like, our daily conversation at the table was the miracles of the day. It was nothing. We just took them for granted. The only time we talk about miracles is when we explain why they were needed, what was important about the miracle. Just the miracle itself, that's nothing. We're not miracle people. You know, there are other religions that are founded on the miracles, on walking on water and the various different things. That's great for them. For us, it's unimpressive. Who wants to walk in the water when you can swim? Why would you want to walk in this water? It's like going to the beach and you've got an opportunity to swim in this magnificent ocean, and I bring you your running clothes and I tell you, run a marathon across Kinneret. Why would I do that? I can run a marathon around Kinneret. I would like to swim in Kinneret. I would like to go scuba diving in Kinneret. I would like to immerse myself in Kinneret. The last thing I want to do is walk on the surface. Why would I want to do that? That's what it is with a miracle. Who wants to walk on the surface when you can dive into the depths? When you can live, when you can experience, when you can challenge and be challenged? Why would you want a miracle? Being as we were in Nissan was like animals. The animal wants to go somewhere, you put the animal in your car and you take the animal there. And if the animal walks, it walks not because it loves the journey. It's nothing for that. An animal is acted upon. An animal acts instinctually. An animal doesn't make choices. An animal doesn't get involved in self-development. An animal doesn't have character growth. An animal doesn't have an neshama that they're taking care of and that they're developing and that they're nurturing. Animals don't have that. And that was us in Nissan. That's why it's a korban sorim. That's why we bring barley, because we were in that state. Not in the sense of animals as being low like animals, but just being passive like animals. And we've got 49 days to grow out of that and to get into a space of being a Ben Torah, somebody being fitting to receive the Torah at Sinai. Because to receive the Torah at Sinai, you've got to work on yourself. You've got a journey to take. This isn't something you can do just instantly. You're not going to get the Torah instantly. You're not going to understand the Torah instantly. That's not going to happen. And that's why we're told at the beginning of the parsha, I've said to you before, when the parsha and the daf yomi and the month all intersect, something important is going on. And in bechukotai telechu, there we've got the very first phrase in the parsha is telechu, walk step by step. Go in the journey. And what is bechukotai? Rashi brings the Chazal there. It means amal b'Torah, study the Torah, but do it by walking. Do it step by step. Don't do it like instant food. There's a difference between instantaneousness and process. And there are things that need process, and there's such delight and growth in the process. Yes, you can buy junk food and it's ready-made and you get it, you take it, you eat it. That's animal food. That's how animals eat. When they get the food, it's ready for eating. When a human being gets the food, we get wheat. It has to be milled. It has to be refined. It has to be baked. It takes a long time before the wheat can be eaten as a beautiful loaf of bread. But the process is what makes us human. Just eating the loaf doesn't make us human. An animal can eat the loaf too. What makes us human is producing the loaf. Baking the bread makes us human. Milling the flour makes us human. That's what Shavuos is. Yes, we can achieve great heights, but we've got to achieve it through our own efforts. And that's why we bring a korban from chitim. We bring flour for the korban. This is no longer a korban of so'urim. And that's the imbichukutai telechu. That's the process of learning. And in learning, as we've mentioned in this shir and other shirim so many times before, the big yetzer hara, the big tendency, the default nowadays, to try and do Torah instantly as well. To try and just chap something here and chap something there. And that's fine. You get it. You accumulate information. You accumulate some knowledge. But the process of learning, to be able to just enjoy yourself journeying through, and there's challenge in that, of course. You look at a piece of Gemara and it looks meaningless in the beginning. You can't make sense of it. And little by little pieces start developing and you start seeing where it's going. And then there's some insights and then there's enlightenment and then it's exciting. That's all process. But you've got to be willing to go the journey. That's what Sfiras HaOmer is. Be willing to go the journey. If you want my Torah, commit to journeying with me. If you want instant, forget it. If you want a quick vort, you don't need the Torah for that. You've got the internet. You want a daf yomi, you don't need the Torah for that. You've got the internet. You want process. You want to transform yourself. You're not going to transform yourself by reading through a daf in 30 minutes. It's not going to happen. There's going to be no transformation. You will have seen stuff, you will have learned stuff, but there's no personal transformation. But take one Tosfos and spend 6 hours on it, you will not be the same person when you finish that. And that's the kind of commitment that Hashem wants. It's not only learning Torah, it's experiencing life as a Torah person. If you want to experience life as a Torah person, it's a commitment to journeying. If you want the quick outcome, you want results, that's not what the Torah is about. And interesting, we said in the case of Hashem creating man and woman first together, then separates them, then brings them together again, we've got another kind of event like that. The Gemara says in Nido, Daf Lamed, Umelamdim oto kol haTorah kula. When the fetus is in the womb still, they teach the fetus the entire Torah. So if anybody gets all excited about when you're finishing Shas, you've got to realize, before I was born, I knew this already. This is no big deal. You finish Shas. A fetus knows Shas. A hard drive knows Shas. A monkey could know Shas. What's important is, Kivan sheba le'avir ha'olam ba malachus taro apiv. When he gets born, an angel comes and slaps his face in a way that makes him forget all of the Torah he learned. U'mishacho kol haTorah kula, and he forgets everything. What's Hashem playing with? What's this joke? You make man and woman one, then you separate them, then you tell them to come together again. You teach the Uba the whole Torah, then you make him forget it, and you say, go and learn Torah again. What are you playing with? Because what Hashem wants from us is journeying towards something that you've already got. Not journeying to something that's foreign. Not to journey to something that's alien. To journey to something that's already in you. He wants the husband and wife to come together because they've already been together. It's a rediscovery of togetherness. That's what threesomeness is. That's what trilogy is. It's taking these two separate things and not bringing them together. Let's now redefine it. The threeness, or the trilogy, is taking the two separate parts and returning them together, bringing them back together. Because you can't bring together things that were never meant to be together. You can only bring together things that come from the same source, things that come from one place. Shnei Ktuvim, when you've got two opposite verses and you're trying to make sense of these two contradictory verses, you can only do that if they come from one source, if they both come from Sinai, if they both come from Hashem. Then you can bring them together with a Katsuv Ashlishi, with a third verse. A man and a woman who were together in the beginning can come together again. And a baby, a child who once knew the whole Torah, can rediscover the Torah again. You can't rediscover it if you never knew it. And that's why there's that sense of intuitive knowledge, that sense of knowing, of feeling that this is something that comes from within you. Nissan was only for Jewish people. Kol ben nechar, any strange person is not allowed to eat from the korban Pesach. Pesach is strictly for the Jewish people. And you've heard people say perhaps one shouldn't have a non-Jewish person at the Seder. It's one time of the year. Non-Jew wants to come to Shul on Yom Kippur with pleasure. One non-Jew wants to come and hear the shofar on Rosh Hashanah with pleasure. But Pesach Seder is a time for the family to be on its own. No, nobody else. Kol ben nechar, nobody else. That's Nissan. But that's not the case with Sivan. There's an amazing psikta of Rav Kahana. We have the Bechilta of Rabbi Yishmael. There's a psikta of Rav Kahana where he says the following. B'chodesh hashlishi, back again on this third month. What is the threeness? Lama b'chodesh hashlishi. Why the threeness? Why does the Torah tell us? He's not asking why the third month, because that's a silly question. If it was the fourth month, you would say why the fourth month? So then make it the fifth month. Then you'll say why the fifth month? It's got to be on 1 month, so who cares when it is? That's not what it means. Lama b'chodesh hashlishi means, why is the threeness significant? Why does the Torah tell us this is number 3? So we've learned one angle of this. Rav Kahana has a different angle. So as not to give the non-Jews the opportunity to say, if we got the Torah, we would also keep it. The Jews have got the Torah, why didn't we get it? I gave it in the third month, in the month of the twins. That's a bit of a strange thing to say. Tu'umim is 2. Why say, I gave it in the third month, which is the month of twins? Why? Well, now we've understood that, because you can't have 3 without twins. And twins were together. They come from a together place. They're separated and they come together again. That's what Tu'umim are. It's that third month of the coming together, the bringing back together 2 components that were separate. Why? Where do we have twins in the Torah? Who are famous twins? Yaakov and Esav are the famous twins. She'im bikesh Esav harasha lehitgayer. What would happen if Esav, if Amalek, Haman, Amalek, all of those people came and said, we want to convert, we want to be part of the Torah. V'lasot tshuva, we want to do tshuva. V'lavo v'lilmod Torah, I want to come and learn Torah. Yavo v'yilmad u'mekablo ani. Let him come and learn, and I will receive him. Lefichach natati b'chodesh hashlishi. I put it here so that you know it contains opposites. The Torah is able to contain opposites. There are the Jewish people, and its twin opposite is Amalek. That's the twin opposite. That's why there's so much conflict in the world at the moment, because we're fighting with our twin brother. We're fighting with 2 opposites that should be together, but aren't. Says Hashem, if at any point you want to come together, it's Chodesh Hashlishi. It's possible for 2 opposites to come together because of the threeness that the Torah creates. There's Yisrael and there's Esav, but the Torah can bring Yisrael and Esav together. It's possible for that to happen. So we need to use this understanding of Sivan to understand the world that we're in at the moment, at least some of it, and to understand that we are in a Yaakov and an Esav kind of a fight. Our fight is not just with the our neighbors in Gaza or in the north or in Yehuda v'Shomron. That's not our fight. Our fight, as you can see, is worldwide. Our fight is with the power of Esav. Our fight is with Amalek. That's what we're fighting, a force in the world. And they can't be together without the threesome, without the mitzvah. And the mitzvah is the Torah. Unless the world begins to see itself through a lens of the Torah, talking necessarily about them converting, although that's also open to them. If they want, if Russia wants to be mitgayer, even that he's permitted to do. And we will accept him. If the world can begin to look, they're not obligated to convert. They're welcome to live in their religious spaces. But if you could look at the world through the Katuv Ashlishi, if these two twins who are fighting can look at the world through the threesome rather than the twosome, that extra dimension that lets you see New York and Los Angeles at the same time, that Katuv Ashlishi that lets you see two opposing views in the Torah as contained in one idea. If you are willing to do that, if you're just willing to move out of the world a bit and take a higher view and see the world through the lens of the Torah, then Yaakov and Esav can actually come together and can live as two different and separate peoples, but contained in one threesome, in one trilogy, which is then the Jewish people. And that brings us to another use of the word holech, walking, which is so important in the month of Sivan. Uvnei Yisrael halchu bayabasha b'toch hayam. Just reflect on that verse for a moment. And the Bnei Yisrael walked on dry land in the midst of the sea. Now we know what that means, and the sea split. V'hamayim lahem chomam miminam u'mismolam. The water was a wall for them on their right and their left. But think of the metaphor slightly differently, and look at it very literally. They walked on dry land in the midst of the sea. A human being is capable of doing that. In a Nissan perspective, the sea has to split for you to walk in dry land. But in a Sivan perspective, you can walk through the sea and be dry. In other words, you can insulate yourself from everything that's happening around you. You can preserve your own purity from everything that's happening around you. You can walk through a stormy sea in peaceful tranquility. V'nei Yisrael halchu bayabasha b'toch hayam, in the midst of the sea. The sea were walls. They sheltered the Jewish people. The sea insulated and protected us as we walked through the bowels of the sea. And we're living in a storm at the moment. We don't have to be drawn into the storm. It's possible for us to find dry land, to find security, to find firmness, to find tranquility, even in the stormy time, and to be a Bnei Yisrael that is alchu bayabasha b'toch hayam. We're on dry land. The world is storming around us and the sea is raging. And we're in dry land. That's another duality that we have to be able to master. The outside storm and inner peace. And we're only going to be able to find that by, again, moving out, getting some distance, being able to look at it from afar, understanding the bigger picture of historic development and what's happening from a perspective of the evolution of history in the Jewish people as explained in Tanakh, and be able to see it through the eyes and through the lens of the Torah. The Torah, which is that third, the Torah is always the third, the mitzvah. You've got the stormy sea and the tranquil individual, and the Torah who's able to make sense of it and bring some kind of integrity to it, some kind of wholeness to it. So when I started off and I said Nissan was the time of miracles, and thank God we were saved miraculously. Sivan is the time when things are going to continue to be stormy, but we can find tranquility. And there's Siyata Dishmaya, Hashem, it's a month that Hashem helps us find that tranquility. That in the midst of all the hardship that's happening, and the loss, and the worry, and the fears, we can find spaces in which to be tranquil, in which to walk by Yabasha, in dry land, despite the storminess of the sea, and to be able to get through this period of time without being destroyed internally in ourselves, not allowing the stormy seas to drench us, and even worse, God forbid, to drown us, but to make sure that we and our families stay secure, directed, full of emunah and bitachon, because that's what keeps us in that space of dryness, attached to Torah, learning Torah, excited by Torah, delighted by Torah, and by the mitzvot that we're doing in the month of Iyar that we've just had. We have had a mitzvah every single day. We've been able to do a very special mitzvah that connects this Nissan to this Sivan that we're talking about, and to go through Shavuot itself and the day and everything that means, and to be sure to come out on the other side when this period will be over, however long it takes to get over, to make sure that we've come through it intact We've come through it in peace. We've come through it having journeyed to greatness rather than hidden from challenge. Having journeyed through hardship to greatness rather than having jumped and skipped the way we might have done in Nissan if we only had one leg. We have two legs, and we can steadily put one leg before the other and be holchim. We can go bayabasha, in dry land, on dry land, betoch hayam, in the midst of the stormy sea. So have a wonderful Rosh Chodesh, a wonderful month of Sivan, a wonderful Shavuot, and in Yirtzeh Hashem we will get together again next time.